leader takes these things inside of people and looks at them for what they could be, not what they currently are, and says, hey, this is how you get to where you want to be, and you have everything you need inside of you. You just got to redirect this energy into positive outcomes, you know, and positive actions. And then this outcome that you desire, it's automatic if you just make the right choices.
Welcome back to another episode of Just Real Quick. I'm your host, Jefferson K. Rogers. In the studio with me today, my main man, Jeffrey Fieldstad. We got some exciting stuff to cover with you today. Thank you for checking in. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about leadership, one of my favorite subjects. We'll talk about a couple of my other favorite subjects in the process of this. There's so much to talk about with leadership that we could make this a 2-hour podcast, maybe even 3. We're going to keep it short, so stick around. We're going to drop some wisdom, share some experiences throughout our leadership journey in business and in life, and some things for you to take into your everyday life and your business to continue to improve, make a bigger impact, and inspire people to do more with their lives than they would have done previously to meeting you. So to start this thing off, first thing that came to mind when I read the title of the podcast today was pressure.
Yep.
And I've gotten into this habit of when I have an inspired thought, I just write it down.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason that came to me, and it's something that I've heard you bring up a lot, that pressure is a privilege.
Yes.
And my development as a leader has come as a result of being able to deal with pressure.
Yeah.
And do it consistently over time, and do it with a good attitude and good mentality. And over time, you also start to recognize that as a result of the pressure has come the growth.
Yes. Yeah, I think that I really think the difference between a leader and somebody who never builds anything or doesn't become a leader is not with what they're born with or some special skill. But I think the difference becomes when somebody is under pressure, you know, they thrive. They have a good attitude about it. Like, you know, pressure is a privilege. Courage is contagious. I've always said it's like, you know, a lot of times people pray for courage and then they get the opportunity to be courageous, which means they got to deal positively with pressure and standards and expectations. And the people that rise to that become leaders because it's inspiring, right? But most people don't do that. I've always said they have like this little pressure release valve in them, which I think this.
And you always reach right here.
Always, right? Because it's always like this, like
like you got some gas or something?
I feel like that's how people are, right? It's like they get nervous or they stress out. This self-care mentality that people have is BS, in my opinion, because it's like, yes, you're going to have pressure, but isn't that what you're supposed to? It's like if you have kids. When you have a child, there's a lot of pressure on you all of a sudden. And I think if you want to become a great parent, which I think most people do, and you love this child, the love that you have for that child causes you to want to be better. It's like this biological instinct that we have. But if we have that same response to leadership in business or whether it's sports or whatever somebody's deciding to be a leader in, or just in life for that matter, then rather than trying to release this pressure and go, oh, well, I need to self-care and I need to do what, you know, makes me feel comfortable, which I don't
want to get burned out.
Yeah, which is the enemy of greatness. Yeah, it's like, come on, everything you're saying right now is what average people do, and you've been programmed by average people your whole lives. And they might be great people, right? Teachers,
most of them are.
Parents, incredible people, but just giving us bad advice when it comes to being an incredible leader.
Because of programming.
Exactly.
I mean, all of my favorite people condition me with those same things.
Yes.
And as I start to reflect on all the messaging and the constant barrage of things that were meant to keep me, you know, you just start looking at it differently once you start recognizing it. It's like all these things were meant to keep me freaking average and ordinary.
Yes.
And in the beginning of my leadership journey, I wasn't very tactful with the way that I approached it, because every time somebody brought something in to my environment that was against my beliefs and the things that were going to help me become great, I didn't respond very well. And I told them to like keep that fucking shit to yourself.
Yeah. Well, and I think the reason why that happens, and tell me how you feel about this, I've come to the conclusion, and not to say that it's right or wrong, but my conclusion on that is because I did the same thing. It was like someone would say something, it would offend me, piss me off, and my response would be in their face. But I think it was because I didn't have enough wisdom or clarity or sureness in my belief yet, because it was still kind of this experiment in, is this really the way? And if it is, I have to be all in on this to see if it's going to work. Where what happens is I move forward in my leadership journey and I realized, like, no, these philosophies absolutely work. Then I was like, do whatever you're going to do, because
it's not going to affect me.
Yeah, I know that the changes I've made in my mindset, my actions, they've yielded these results. And so I'm far more confident in them now. And somebody else's response or negative comments or beliefs or whatever aren't going to influence what I already know is the right way.
Yeah, and I agree with you, because it was very similar for me, and I hadn't had the confidence, and I was scared.
Yeah.
So I think that's another thing that plays into it. And the reason I say that this is what I did early on, is to just put things into perspective. Maybe somebody who's still early on in the process, and they're trying to figure out how to navigate these types of thoughts and the messaging and the paradigms that they've grown up in. And not always are you going to be able to handle it tactfully in the beginning.
Right. Yeah, well, it's because these feelings that we have of being scared or fear, it's not like they ever go away. It's just that you get stronger and you get better. And so, at the beginning of your journey, your emotions might be all fear, and then you have this little bit of knowledge. But as your knowledge and wisdom grows and you become more sure in it, the fear is still there. It's just a much smaller percentage of your actual belief in these philosophies.
And then it's like water off of a duck's back.
Yeah.
And you just become more resilient to it. It's still all there, and I'm still ultra aware of all those things in my environment. But now I don't have to say, when somebody's got rap music playing, I would freak out.
Yeah.
And be like, turn that shit off.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear it. And it would offend me.
Yeah.
And it was just because of some of those things you're talking about, the wisdom, the knowledge, staying regulated and being confident in where you're at in your journey. And I didn't have that early on. And little by little, I recognized, because I was ultra aware of how I made people feel, and I don't want to make people feel like shit.
Right.
They're in their journey for whatever reason. I'm in mine. And just because I have these beliefs doesn't mean I need to make people feel like shit because of where they're at. And they would be caught off guard by it. And they're like, I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. I was just listening to music.
Well, I think what you're saying right there is big. And I hope people understand this, because when you start talking about the way you make other people feel, I have here at the top of my notes is leadership is influence. And how are you influencing the environment you're in? How are you influencing the people that are around you? And caring enough to want to make a positive impact on the other people around you, that's what a leader does. And so I think it's big for people to understand, because I was there. I've made dumb responses and said stupid things that I almost am embarrassed to say that that's how I responded. But it's like, you have to go through these things to get enough knowledge to go, oh, here's how I should have handled that situation. And that's where sayings like, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. It's like, I didn't even know that I needed help in that area until I made a mistake in that area. And so rather than beat myself up about it, I started going, oh, how can I make people feel better? How can I bring more inspiration out of other people? And then I started realizing the fulfillment of a leader comes through inspiring positive action in others. But I also can have a negative effect on that too, right? If I'm a leader, and which in any environment you walk into, if you have a negative impact or a positive impact, you have influenced that environment. And if leadership is influence, which I believe it is, you have to ask yourself, what kind of leader are you? And I want to be a leader who inspires positive actions and positive change, and the results that I'm of people that I'm leading speak for themselves, and then it starts changing people's lives in a positive way. And so I think that's how it comes back to saying, all right, what are the responses that we have to things that maybe threaten our beliefs? And that says a lot about who you are as a leader, And you do a phenomenal job at that, by the way. I think anybody that knows you personally knows that there are times that, something happens, you totally disagree with this statement, and rather than hitting it head on, which I still think once in a while you do if you believe that it's needed to, right? We had a conversation the other day about a statement, right? Be careful, And I love those conversations, but it's also I've watched you have these moments or these coaching or teaching moments where you just plant a seed and you ask a simple question that maybe challenges the way that person is thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that seed can start to grow and allow you to influence and water it and nourish it. And then they start to go, oh my gosh, remember that one time you asked me this question? It's good leadership, right?
Yeah, and even if it doesn't ever come up in that way, and if it's never even recognized,
Right.
the amount of impact that you can make on somebody's life by planting those seeds and not trying to be manipulative. I'm just trying to share my perspective by asking questions and getting people to look at things in a little bit different way, because we all get caught in these patterns in our beliefs. And a lot of us are stubborn, especially in sales. There's a lot of big personalities.
Yeah.
And the way that I think right now is important to me.
Yes.
But as a leader, I feel like it's one of the most important traits to continually be open.
Yes.
And coachable and looking for different perspectives. And, you know, when I have a different perspective, we've had multiple examples and we spend a lot of time together. So you get to hear me all the time. And I don't even do it consciously a lot of the time.
Right.
I just know that my old way of doing things, trying to force shit down people's throat, doesn't work that well.
Right.
And it actually defeats the whole purpose.
Yep.
But as I've recognized and I'm paying attention to how people feel and how they respond and where I can make the biggest impact, I'm also open for feedback and different perspectives. And I'm trying to get out of every interaction every bit of insight that I can. Why is that person feeling that way? And how can I influence them? And is there some legitimacy? Because I know that there's a lot of things that have gone on in this office that I've been swayed by because I thought about one way and I was one-sided.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, man, that really brought some clarity around that subject. And here we go off in a different direction.
So let me ask you this. On that topic, because that kind of flies in the face of the statement, you shouldn't care what other people think. Because you do care what people think.
So, yeah, and I've said both. And I do think that there is all in the same breath. You can talk about not giving a shit what anybody thinks about you, but caring how people feel, how you make people feel.
Yes. I figured that would be your response, because you have so many times that people say, I don't care what anybody thinks about me. And a lot of people assume to be a great leader, they assume, well, then I don't care how anybody else feels, or I don't care how I treat other people because I don't care what anybody thinks about me. No, how you treat people and how you make people feel is very important. But how they feel about you, right? How they think is
none of my business.
Exactly. You can't control that, but you can control how you treat other people. You can control the energy that you bring to the relationship. And it takes two people to have a positive relationship, right?
And I think when you're saying that, like from the perspective, I know both you and I have said that when we were teenagers and in our early 20s. I don't give a shit what anybody else thinks about me.
Yep.
And we weren't thinking about it in those terms.
No, exactly.
Like we literally didn't think, or probably how we made people feel, because I know I was abrasive and I said some shit that I'm not proud of.
Right.
But as a leader, you start to recognize these little opportunities to influence and to reflect on how these interactions went within your communication and the things that you're trying to get done, the impact that you're trying to make, the accountability that you're trying to hold over your team. And sometimes you don't always do it right.
Yeah, we all make mistakes in the process to becoming the person that we're proud of being. I think in this context, one of the things I've always tried to teach people is if you're going to be a great leader and you're going to have influence in people, I think what causes someone to respond correctly is a leader will help build people's self-esteem, right? Because I really think at the end of the day, the results we get in our life are a direct reflection of our self-esteem. Because a lot of that, the way we treat other people, the way we treat ourselves, the way our belief system is all based on our self-esteem. One of the examples I've used in the past is like, hey, if you give somebody who has a low self-esteem keys to a brand new Ferrari, right? They've never been in a Ferrari. Maybe they've never had the ability to drive not only an expensive car, but a very fast car. Naturally, you go, hey, go drive it. And they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know. Is it insured? I don't want to drive it. I don't want to touch it. They don't even want to sit in the car. I'm sure you've seen people with this response, right? But then you take somebody who's experienced a massive amount of success and you give them the keys to the Ferrari. You go drive it. They go, are you sure you want me to go drive this? Like I want to drive it? You go, yeah, man, have fun. And they get in and they go drive it. And it could be the same exact situation, but the self-esteem of the individual who gets in that car is going to be determined. One person is nervous, scared, they're anxious, and then the other person is excited, fired up. They want to see how far they can push this vehicle. And the difference was their self-esteem. And so I always looked at it as a leader. If I can help somebody who's maybe uncomfortable in a situation, maybe a little bit anxious, maybe a little bit nervous about the situation. It's not the car.
Yeah.
It's not the vehicle I'm talking about. Maybe it's in business. Maybe it's as a parent. Maybe it's as a spouse. Maybe it's just in any situation where I can say, hey, how can I help them have a perspective where they're a little more confident, a little more sure of themselves so they can respond correctly and help them move into this successful person's perspective. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
No, the first thing I think about when you say that is there's so many times when you see that a person is not quite living up to their potential and they've still got some habits that are holding them back and they're not really disciplined yet in the areas that you know is going to help them continue to grow as a leader or a salesperson and in their personal success. So there's these little opportunities as a leader that you're going to have to personally have an impact on somebody's life by challenging them.
Yep.
And whether that's getting up in front of a group to talk and share a message, I've done that so many times to my guys, and most of the time, completely unplanned.
Yeah.
And it's just like spur of the moment. I'm feeling inspired. I'm looking at them across the room, and I know they've asked the right questions. They want to do big things.
Yep.
And I've seen that they're missing some of these things, and without the repetitions, without these opportunities, we just keep repeating the same patterns.
Right.
So we've got these cool opportunities to challenge somebody, even though they may not ever do it on their own, but now they're on the spot.
Yeah.
And they're going to go stand up in front of a room and tell a story, or they're going to tell their experience about this process. Or you've got an opportunity also to challenge somebody that's asking you for some help. Like we've got an operations team and I've got a sales leadership team. And on both sides of it, I've had guys come to me and ask for assistance in handling these really difficult conversations or scenarios that if I keep doing it, I'm going to have to keep doing it. Yes. And I don't want to have to keep doing it because I'm good at it because of the repetition. I was forced to do it, and I was able to handle the pressure really well.
Yep.
But now I've got an opportunity to show this person that they are capable of handling more pressure than they think they are.
Yes.
And if we talk through this conversation that you need to have or this scenario you need to go through with a customer, and we've kind of planned it out, we can keep all the emotions out of it. We don't have to be reactive. We can go in there pre-planned with the outcome that we would like to have. And whether it happens or not is irrelevant because we planned with the best intentions to make this happen. And now that person, after doing that once, twice, 3, 4, 100 times, is way more equipped by me challenging them to do that.
Yep.
Than if I was to just show them how to do it and puff my chest and say, well, let me just show you how it's done.
Yeah. Well, that's wisdom, right? Having enough wisdom to know how do you influence somebody to make the right decision. And sometimes it's not an easy call as a leader because you have to really know what moves people too. You have to know their personality. What do they want? What are they trying to accomplish? It reminds me of a story that's actually a biblical story, and paraphrasing this in a huge way. But this lady who had a baby, and she gets her baby kidnapped. I don't know if you know the story. Another lady takes a baby and says, hey, this is my baby. And they bring it to the king, and he says, well, let's just cut the baby in half, and you each get half. And so it goes through, and the real mother says, no, let her have the baby. I don't want anything to happen. Then he realizes real quickly who was the real mother. And I think when you enter a situation in leadership where you're giving somebody the ability to make the right choice, if you know what drives them and you know, like, hey, if they're on the operations, they're probably going to be driven by something different than on the sales side. But if you know what drives them, then it's a lot easier to help guide them through an outcome that's going to be positive using wisdom. But I think you've only been able to help people through those situations because you went through them first. And then when you went through them, you probably made a mistake. And then most importantly, you went to a coach or a mentor or a book or a podcast, and you went and sought out growth opportunities. And then you grew from that, which is why a coach, a leader, a mentor is so important. Listen to a podcast like this, because then when you make a mistake, you're like, oh, that's what I should have done differently. I always say the book I'm reading right now is the greatest book I ever read. And it always happens because like whenever I'm reading this book, it's like something happened in my life and then they give me the solution for it. But if that wasn't happening, I would have had the solution in front of me, but the issue wasn't happening, so I didn't even know I needed the solution until the issue happened. Which is why growth is so important, why constantly seeking growth as a leader, right?
It is. Yeah, it's a never-ending process. And I've ran into young entrepreneurs and salespeople that, you know, they've accomplished a lot and they've reached a new high in their success.
Yeah.
And the one thing that stands out to me is a lot of times these guys think that they've made it.
Yeah.
And they're the top dog and they got it figured out. And I've had the opportunity to share with them, just ask, you open to some feedback? Sometimes they're not. And sometimes they say they are and they're not. But yeah, if you feel like you've got it figured out, you're just getting started.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's, you know, one of my favorite books is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, which is a hard book to read, but it's a great book to study. And I think one of the things I really learned from those type of books, including like Seneca and some of these others, is like the more you learn, the more you realize you really don't know. You know, it's like 10 years ago, I was like a vegan. You know, I really wasn't a vegan, but mostly I would say plant-based, and sometimes I would eat meat. Today, that's all I eat is red meat. You know, I'm just a carnivore. But I was pretty staunch in my beliefs.
You were convinced.
Yes. And I was willing to stand on this heel and go, I know for a fact, you know, and here I am today, and I'm going, well, I don't really know that I know for a fact. I'm just doing what I think is best at the moment, but it doesn't mean I'm not open for change or someone to challenge my ideas. Because if I'm not willing to let someone challenge my beliefs, my ideas, then first of all, do I really believe it if I'm not willing to let somebody challenge it? That's the first question. Second thing is, if I already think that I have it all figured out, how can I possibly get better from here on out, which means I've capped out?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a great lesson right there. And I'm hoping people watching this are looking for some answers like this in their life. And you're open at a place where you can bring a message in and recognize that that's one of your deficiencies. Because I see it happen all the time, even in my own organization. There's people that are going through this process in their leadership journey, and they want to do better. And there's just these behaviors that they've developed over time, whether they've seen it in their parents or it's just a pattern they keep repeating, where they get stuck in their own beliefs and growth mindset hasn't quite set in fully.
Right.
And they don't necessarily even challenge things. It's just like completely shut off to an idea.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. And if you want to grow as a leader in any respect, there's the 5 levels of leadership, and there's all kinds of different little nuances in between your first level and the 5th level, the pinnacle of leadership.
Yeah.
And one of those things that's in common between your 4th and 5th level leaders is they are lifetime learners.
Yeah.
And they are always open. And I'm proud of this because I still have it, and I didn't even notice it until I just over and over through my mentoring and my coaches and my advisors, I had people tell me over and over that I just have this kind of like a naive curiosity is what they would tell me.
Yeah, it's awesome. What a great compliment.
And I didn't know how to take that in the beginning. I was like, okay, is that...
You're calling me naive.
Like I'm always just, even for like the newest person or whether it's the newest person in my company that's green and straight off the street, or if it's somebody that I've just met for the first time, I'm engaged and I'm listening and I'm asking questions and I'm curious and I'm looking for something, just like a sponge, to soak up and take the things that apply to me and get rid of the rest.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's something that I think we always should be cognizant of the fact that as we learn and as we get better, our old ways of thinking, we usually look back on and go, I can't believe, just kind of like we were saying about ways we've handled situations in the past. If we continuously grow, we're even going to feel that way about how we're feeling now and the things we're saying now. And I think the willingness to just say, hey, I just want to grow and I want to get better. And the only way I'm going to get better is maybe to look at something different or think about it a little bit differently. If you're doing the same thing over and over and you expect a different result, it's a definition of insanity. At some point, we have to be willing to change. And if you don't change, nothing's going to change. And so I think having this, as you called it, a naive curiosity, just the desire to, how can I get better? It's also, if leadership is influence, which I believe it is, the only way you can ever actually influence somebody is to have some common ground to start on. If you have a solid, foundation to start on, then you can actually build a good relationship. Then you can actually build trust where you can have influence with people, right?
Yeah.
And if that's really what you want to do, then I think that's the power of questions and this curiosity, and it's got to be genuine. And you have to have a desire to grow and a desire to offer value wherever it can be. And the desire to allow other people to provide value to you, which means you have to be open for some constructive criticism, which isn't always comfortable, by the way. And growth hurts. It's uncomfortable, just like doing squats and getting your body in a way that you're proud of. It hurts. It's uncomfortable. A lot of times getting our mind right sometimes is uncomfortable too. So you've got to be okay with that. If someone gives you some feedback and it hurts.
But if you can compare the two types of leadership, one is more like a management style and one is leadership. And you've got a scenario where there's an opportunity to bring something to the table that can help grow the business. There's a new perspective. There's a new way of doing things. And you got a manager that's stuck in his ways and kind of closed-minded to innovation and creativity. And we've always done it this way, and we will continue to do it this way. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
We all know those kind of people.
Yep.
And then there's the other side of the spectrum where a leader is it's a servant leadership, and they're always looking for ways that they can serve their people and that they can create a safe environment for them to be a part of, that they're excited to show up and feel like they have a seat at the table and they're making contributions and their opinions are being heard.
Right.
Some of the best innovations and creative ideas that have impacted JKR Windows haven't come from me.
Right.
I don't take credit for most of what we've done here at JKR Windows. I've just been the leader that's put this incredible group of people together, that's created an environment for them to be creative and come together with their ideas and help us grow something incredible.
Yeah.
And then also, I think one of the biggest things for you to develop leadership, especially the way that I've done it, where most of the people that work here have started with zero experience.
Yeah.
The one thing that I knew that aligned with JKR Windows was their morals and ethics and their loyalty.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, that's one of my most important personal values is loyalty.
Yep.
So I'm willing to make exceptions on experience and expertise and time in industry for somebody who's a cultural fit and is loyal and will be here for the long run.
Yeah.
And then just letting those people have some creative freedom and let them make mistakes.
Yeah.
And some of those mistakes have cost us a lot of money.
Yeah.
But that's an investment in your people. And you can either come down on them and make them feel like shit and lose out on a huge opportunity for growth in that person if they truly are aligned with your morals and ethics and they're loyal.
Yep.
They will never do that again.
Right.
If they're the right person.
Right.
And if you come down on them and you blow them out of the water, you're starting over with another person to do the same thing.
Yep. Yeah, I've never understood why, like in this part, I think you're talking about, you can teach skills, you can teach industry knowledge, but you can't teach character. And I've always looked at, in fact, Brandon Neal one time said something to me. I was having an issue with somebody, and he goes, Jeff, you just got to treat them like you would treat your children. He's like, how would you treat your children in this situation? And for some reason, that for me, like a light bulb went off, and it was like, I realized at that moment, it's like, I want my kids to do better. I want my kids to be more successful than me. I want my kids to thrive, and I want them to feel good. I want them to know they're loved, and I want them to be confident. And so as I watch my child make a mistake, I don't want to have them avoid those mistakes. I just wanted to be confident enough to try again, right? To just go for it again and just learn in the process. How can I give them a little bit of guidance, a little bit of adjustment? Hey, try this, try this, try this. Okay, brush them off, go for it again, And they might crash again, but like, let's just, like the one time Rome was riding out in the desert one time, went out and he tipped the bike over and he wasn't wearing boots and it burned his leg, And for me, I was like, all right, hurry up, get back on. And here's what you do next time so you don't get burned again. But I got to get him back on and get him going again so he's not scared of it, right? So how do I keep him confident and loving the chase or the challenge, but still having him feel like, all right, I could do this.
Yeah, with tears still dripping down his cheeks.
Exactly.
You sent him off again.
Yeah. And so I look at in business the same way, and I would hope that leaders, and I wasn't always like this either. It was like someone would make a mistake and I'd be mad because for me, I'm like looking at it as they missed a sale or missed an opportunity or, whatever it may be. And I started, when Brandon challenged me in that, I'm like, you know what? If I have this opportunity to make this person just be excited to get up and go for it one more time, what would happen if we had an army of people that felt like that? Like, hey, I made a mistake, but how do I learn? How do I get back up? And how do I go after it again? So I'm not scared of it, and I go for it. And in our family, it's kind of become a motto now. It's like, all right, if you get hurt, get back up and hurry up and go so you're not scared of that thing again. Go for it.
It's so important.
Yeah.
Same thing applies in business.
It does.
Fail fast.
Yep.
Get up and go to the next thing.
Yep.
There's been so many. If I was to go back and write down all of the little failures along the way, I don't even think I could think of 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah.
Because to me, they weren't failures.
Yeah, no.
They were just like these little learning experiences. Some things work, some things don't.
Yep.
And we're moving so fast that they don't even get registered as a failure. It was just an opportunity for us all to grow, learn what either worked or what didn't work, and we keep pushing forward.
Yep. Yes, those little defining moments that at the moment you don't even realize it's a defining moment. And you don't realize that's what's happening until years down the road. And you look at your career and you go, oh, this happened at that moment. This is how I responded. And then this happened at that moment. And this is how I responded. And you always look back at those things. It was how you responded during, and there were almost always challenging times, right? There were some times where you just made a decision, things were going good, and you made a decision to go to the next level. But usually it's a challenging time. You responded correctly, and they became defining moments in your career that long-term, they were huge, but short-term at the moment, you didn't even realize that this was the response that was going to change everything for you. It was just making the right decision at that moment.
Yeah, and I can, as you're talking through that, I'm thinking about a couple of those defining moments because there's been a lot of them.
Yeah.
And as a leader and somebody who's aspiring to do big things, you can plan on a lot of those moments that lead you down a different path. And you've got an opportunity to, in leadership, there's a big difference between responding and reacting.
Yes.
And I read this book. I can't remember the name of it now, but it was one I think that you had recommended to me. It was a football coach.
Tony Dungy.
That's one that I read too. But he talks about this
Quiet
formula.
strength.
The formula of,
Or was it Nick Saban?
Maybe it was Nick Saban.
Yeah.
No, it was another guy. God damn, I can't think of his name right now. But he has this formula, and it's a pretty common formula. I've heard it in other books, but it stuck out in his wording because it finally just sunk in. It was just like that message that you needed to hear.
Yep.
And you can react to an event. Okay, there's an event and a response creates the outcome.
Yeah,
okay, now you're with me.
So I know that, but I can't. I don't know. I couldn't put it exactly where it came from.
It's in one of those books you recommended to me.
It probably is Nick Saban. It sounds like something that Nick Saban. It's interesting, dude, because this is on my goals that I write down every day. It says, be a pro, act like a champion, respond to adversity, don't react to it.
Respond.
Yep.
If you react, that means you're emotional. And we've all done that. I certainly have. We've got this thing in my family. It's called Rogers Rage. And we go blind. Like I don't see anything besides what just happened. And I'm immediately reacting with all of my emotion and passion. And I've learned how to channel it and use it for positivity and stay regulated and composed and think about what I'm going to do first before I do it.
Yeah.
Because it's a powerful thing.
Yeah.
Like all of this energy that I have, addictive nature, all of this freaking energy and enthusiasm that I have, if pointed in the right direction, can accomplish incredible things.
I think that's such a big thing, dude, because so many people, they'll listen to these mediocre people in life and they'll tell them, oh, you have ADHD or you're an addict or whatever, and there's something wrong with you. No, there isn't. It's a gift that's been given. You just need to learn how to use that tool the way it's designed to be used. And so, I think you've done a great job of doing that. And then I've also watched, because of that, like your story in your book, you've been able to help a lot of other people realize that maybe what they perceived before they worked with you as a challenge now is a gift that can be used to accomplish extraordinary things in their lives. And that's what a leader does. A leader takes these things inside of people and looks at them for what they could be, not what they currently are, and says, hey, this is how you get to where you want to be, and you have everything you need inside of you. You just got to redirect this energy into positive outcomes, and positive actions. And then this outcome that you desire, it's automatic if you just make the right choices.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with you. And I think sometimes people listening, they think, oh, well, everybody's told me this is wrong or that is wrong or this is wrong or that is wrong. No. You have all the talents and skills inside of you. Now, maybe you need to read some books or you need to learn how to overcome objections if you're in sales or, these leadership principles, you have to get the experience. But a lot of times it's just the energy. And if we learn to direct it into the right place, because I have a very addictive personality too, and I've known that for my whole life. And it's always like, people always ask me, I live in Vegas for 10 years. Do you gamble? I go, no, I don't gamble, because I know my personality, right? So I take that addictive attention and I get addicted to performing in areas of my life that yield results that I want, rather than getting addicted to something that I allow to control me just because I just decided to do that, which is what a lot of people do, right? They just respond to life, respond to their emotions, back to the pressure releasing. I had a hard day. Let's go home and have a drink, or, I just need to take a moment for self-care and just unwind. Like, really? That isn't fulfilling. You're not being a leader. Like, how do you lead if you can't lead yourself, how are you going to lead other people, first of all? Right? So you need to be able to, under these times where you have pressure, respond correctly, where you understand certain things about yourself and people tell you, hey, this is wrong with you, going, okay, if someone says that, like, why are they saying that? Is there something that I could use in that part of my personality or my who I am as an individual? Can I use that as a tool to become successful?
Yeah, it's not always easy to recognize.
No.
And a lot of times it comes through reflection. You're on this journey. You're actively seeking out mentorship and you're trying to make progress. And then I was kind of instructed to look back and look at the patterns that are happening throughout your life. It'll help you develop your own personal core values. It'll help you understand the things that fire you up. And it'll also help you recognize that these things that are perceived and that other people are trying to convince you are things that are wrong with you are actually a freaking superpower.
Yep.
And I, for so long, thought that the ADHD that I had been convinced that I had and my addictive nature were going to just keep me down and I was going to have to be medicated my whole life. But turns out I don't need any freaking medication. I always used to tell myself I needed to smoke weed to sleep well, and that for me to go out country line dancing and singing karaoke, I needed to have a couple of drinks. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
It was all just the conditioning from the people I was hanging out with.
Yes, absolutely.
And I believed it. I had told myself that so many times that I believed it, even though I knew it wasn't true. Every time I said it, there was like this thought, like, okay, that's bullshit. Like the bullshit buzzer's going off. But okay, it's just part of who you are.
Yes.
And then little by little, I started to recognize, after moving in the right direction, that these things didn't have to define me.
Right.
And I could use them as a tool. And now being able to inspire other people to recognize it too in themselves, that sometimes all it takes is just a little bit of awareness. And those same traits that you have that are being perceived differently, all you got to do is just flip the script on it a little bit and start looking at it a different way.
Yep.
And then start pouring into that new belief.
Yep. It's like Wayne Dyer said, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it's like this, dude, like you talk about, they say ADHD and all this stuff, and they're literally giving kids medication because they're saying they're hyperactive, or no, maybe they're just bored because they're sitting in class for 8 hours a day, and a 10-year-old boy isn't supposed to be sitting at a desk all day or working in a factory all day. Maybe he's supposed to be out chasing his dreams. Maybe he's supposed to be doing something that lights his soul on fire. And maybe he's just not interested in what you're talking to him about.
Yeah.
And as a leader, we have to recognize these things. So whether you're a parent or you're leading a business, and you go, okay, like if you're a parent and you see in your child, okay, my child is responding in this way, how do I find something that lights them up?
Yeah.
I see that twinkle in their eye, and man, they just want to go for it, because that's where I should be directing them as a parent, not medicating them and tell them, sit down, shut up, and listen to somebody who has never achieved what you want to achieve. But the same thing goes in business. And that's why it's so important as a leader for you to lead the way and do it first and follow the things that light your soul on fire. Because if you do, there's that saying, you light yourself on fire, people will come to watch you burn, and eventually someone will get too close and also they will light on fire. And then you attract people that get excited by what lights your soul on fire. And then next thing you know, you got a group of people around you that have similar beliefs, similar values, and you're all going in a common direction. It seems like accomplishing the impossible is now inevitable, which is huge.
That is leadership.
Yeah.
The definition of leadership. Inspiring people, influencing people, and being the example.
Yep.
And if you're not the example, if you think you're a leader but nobody's following,
just going on a walk.
You're just going for a walk.
Yeah.
And that's where I started. That's where everybody starts.
Yep.
That is those 5 levels of leadership.
Yep.
Number 1 is you're just out there for a walk, and you're trying to prove yourself. And I loved reading that book, because as hard as it was to read that, I was in a position of authority, in a management position when I read that book.
Yeah.
But I didn't have any leadership.
Right.
And it frustrated me, and I got to work to change it.
It's awesome.
I wanted to be inspiring. I wanted to have patience with people. I wanted to help people build belief in themselves and their abilities.
Yep.
And it's been a long process to get to where I'm at, and I don't feel like I'm even close to where I could be. Mm-hmm. But that's what these podcasts are about.
Yeah. Is
for you. It may only be the right time and the right message for 5%. Usually it's only 5% of people. The other 95% aren't ready for the message yet. But if you are ready, get out there and start getting curious and actively seek the information for you to take it to the next level. In your skills, in your leadership, in your communication, with your family, with everybody that you're around every day, start practicing. That it only happens through repetition. And trust me, I practiced on a lot of people, and I blew a lot of people out of the water early on.
Yep.
Didn't go that well for me, but there was only one way for me to do it, and that was to do it.
Yep. Dust yourself off, get back up, go again,
and
just adjust, change, get better, adjust. There's nothing wrong with making a mistake. There's everything wrong with making a mistake over and over again and thinking that it was somebody else's fault. So if you take responsibility and you want to grow and you want to get better and you keep making a mistake over and over, just go, hey, all right, how can I do this differently? And there's nothing wrong with making a mistake, because you tried to change, you tried to get better. And as long as you do that, eventually success, it's inevitable if you just continue going for it again long enough, with enough intensity, and with a desire to grow and change.
Yeah, as we wrap up here, you remember this morning when I said, what if you knew you couldn't fail?
Yep.
Gets me emotional just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because as you start to accomplish things, you build momentum and you build confidence. And those goals start to manifest themselves in your lives.
Yeah.
And little win after little win starts to stack up. And you start to realize, after all the crazy-ass goals that I've accomplished over the past 6 years that I didn't think were going to be possible, there were just like some instruction I was getting from one of my mentors. What if you knew you couldn't fail?
Yeah.
What kind of goals would you write, and what kind of dreams would you chase?
Yeah. The life of your dreams.
The life of your dreams. And you literally have complete control over how it plays out.
Yes.
By being intentional, living an intentional life, putting those big-ass goals together, and then writing out the action plan, and then taking action.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean it's not going to be scary. It doesn't mean chasing the life of your dreams and doing these things that light your soul on fire. It doesn't mean it's not going to be scary. It doesn't mean you're not going to be nervous. It doesn't mean you're not going to make mistakes. It's just going to be a lot of fun, and you're going to have purpose in what you're doing, and you're going to feel gratitude and emotional like you are right now saying that, because, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. As you start thinking about it, you're imagining where you started, where you're at now, and the potential of where you can go with that belief set. Mm-hmm. And I think I always told people, if you knew what I knew, you would do what I do. And it's like, once you start winning and you feel like, man, it's these habits of success, they build this belief, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that it's like, I can do anything I put my mind to. And that's when life becomes fulfilling, because you can really create a life that you desire, that you're chasing, and you're not reacting to everything in life. You're actually creating the life that you want. Which, how special is that to show your family, your kids, and people around you? How different do you show up if you're living the life that you actually designed and you're happy about it and you feel fulfilled? I think you encourage other people to do the same thing. And then, man, people are attracted to that.
They sure are. Yep, and it can happen faster than you think. You start living an intentional life. Sometimes the life that you thought you wanted happens really quickly, and you realize that that's not exactly what you wanted, and then you adjust. And we've all heard these thoughts of, or these opinions about, you find something that you enjoy, that you're passionate about, and you'll never work a day in your life. There's a lot of truth in that, but it's not always what you think it is, like following your passion as a mechanic. I was a freaking mechanic, and I love working on dirt bikes. Yeah. I still do it. I was doing it this morning.
Yeah.
I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to do a cold plunge, and I was like, I got some shit to do on the dirt bikes.
Yeah.
So I take 15 minutes to work on the dirt bikes.
Yeah.
And I jump on my trampoline, and I'm living this life that I have literally created, like down to the T. My lifestyle design is just so clear that sometimes things happen that I designed that I don't agree with anymore and that I don't like. And it's kind of shitty that I've like put myself in this position. But then you just go back to the drawing board, and I'm being intentional about everything that I'm doing. Every hour that I have in my day, that I spend in my business, that I spend with my people, that I spend with my family. I was able to be right there at this perfect place and time this morning. My daughter had just woke up from a nightmare. And I'm walking in the house as she's hauling ass upstairs to just find somebody to give her a hug.
Dad's right
and
there.
I was right there. It was the perfect moment.
Yeah.
And it was 8 o'clock in the morning when I would have normally been at work working a fucking job.
Yep.
And I wouldn't have been able to be there to hold her for 25 minutes. She did not want to let go of me.
Yeah.
It was like my favorite moment yet.
Yeah.
Just being a dad and being able to be there and hold her and remembering those feelings of needing that love and support from my family. Mm-hmm. And you ever like needed a hug so bad and then they just let go?
Yeah.
And you're like, man, I wasn't quite ready.
Yeah. Wasn't done yet.
I wasn't done yet. Mm-hmm. But I was able to be there and I created that. And I take responsibility for all the shit in my life.
Yeah.
But I also am damn proud of what I built.
Yeah, you deserve to sell. You deserve, if you're willing to take responsibility for the things you've done wrong, you deserve to take some credit for the things you've done right, because that's the only way you can teach other people. Right? I wrote down here, you're not going to live your dreams by accident. It's got to be intentional. You got to live for a purpose, on purpose. There has to be purpose behind everything you do if you want to live a life of your dreams. It's got to be intentional, and you're doing it, man. Proud of you, dude.
Thanks, brother.
It's awesome to see.
Feels good. And listen, it's possible for you too. You may not be where you want to be right now, but there's no reason why you can't start moving in the direction by being intentional, writing your goals, surrounding yourself with great people. Surround yourself with people that inspire you. This man standing next to me is not only inspiring, but he's my best friend. And I could be hanging around with a lot of people right now, but I choose to be hanging out with people that challenge me, that inspire me, that are better than me in a lot of ways, so I can continue to level up in every area of my life. Leadership being the topic of the day, this man has led an incredible organization, inspired thousands and thousands of people to go change their lives. And what we're doing here at JKR Windows is something special. And I need incredible, incredible people to help us go do that. I can only make so much of an impact. The rest is done with a team. And If you think you're leading but nobody's following, you're just going for a effing walk. So go and put in the work with your people, go through all the challenges. Pressure is a privilege. And if you're feeling pressure right now, good. If you're not, if things are too easy and things are going smooth, I would be effing worried if I was you. Take this thing seriously. It's time to go to the next level. Pick up that book, The 5 Levels of Leadership, or The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. There's dozens and dozens of books about leadership. Start today. That was my first book, is The 5 Levels of Leadership. Put things into perspective for me, put me on a different trajectory. And every book since then, I'm just looking for 1 or 2 nuggets out of that entire book that I can apply to my life. The rest of it, I just wring out like a sponge and I get rid of it. I'm not ready for it yet. It didn't even sink in. These are the couple things that do inspire me to get better, and I'm going to apply them, and I'm going to go be a better leader, and so should you. So listen, thank you for checking in to another episode of Just Real Quick. If you haven't already, like and subscribe to the podcast. Share this message with somebody you think needs to hear it, who you know has some leadership capabilities inside of them, but they're not tapping into them yet. It's a cool opportunity, and maybe one day they'll thank you for sending them the podcast that changed their life. I remember specifically where I was when I got the recommendation for a book and who it was and how big of an impact it's had on my life. That one moment in time, one of my favorite people just very innocently said, "You got to read this book. You'll love it. The guy has great energy." He didn't know that he was completely changing my life and the entire legacy of my family forever. You have that same opportunity. It may not be this podcast, but something is going to come up. You've got those opportunities with people. You got to be ready. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Amen.
Keep coming back every week for more on the Just Real Quick podcast. Thank you guys for checking in. We'll see you next time.